Today's presentation is really about using AutoCAD Civil 3D with intersections, roundabouts, and cul-de-sacs. And the whole idea behind intersections, roundabouts, and cul-de-sacs is really about working with corridors. So what I'm going to do in reference to today's presentation is kind of give you a feel for what it takes to create, in essence, a corridor, and then an intersection, a roundabout, and a cul-de-sac. So I'll take you through some of the fundamental steps in reference to creating that kind of content. Also, if we have time, I'll show you some of the more complex corridors that you'll be running into in reference to transportation and design within Civil 3D. So as I move on here, again, intersections, roundabouts, and cul-de-sacs. So the first thing we want to consider is most of you guys, if you haven't been using Civil 3D, you want to familiarize yourself with what is a corridor. And really, a corridor is really the design of a roadway, specifically a typical section, based upon the development with an alignment, a profile, and then an assembly, which is a typical section. Now, many of you users who design intersections, ramps, or widenings run into difficulties because of that process in Civil 3D. So what we're going to do is we're going to make that just a little bit more simplified in reference to how you would utilize some of these tools in Civil 3D. And again, this technique, it can be used for all types of corridors where the pavement edge elevations are controlled by a specific crossfall or a profile or even a surface. So, remember way back, the old school intersection, we would put spot elevations, noticing how the cross slopes come across. We would do spot elevations, which is not untypical of the thinking that you really want to do. So, if you think about it, engineering has always been the same. It's just the tools we've used over the last 30 years have kind of changed. So, again, same principle in terms of an intersection. We have cross slopes, we have turning lanes, we have islands. So same principle. So a simple intersection. One of the things that we're going to take a look at is Civil 3D comes straight out of the box with this ideal of an intersection wizard. And really what the intersection wizard does is it creates alignments and curve returns from those with those alignments. And we'll take a look at that also. In the simplest form, yes, maybe intersection wizard. On the other hand, maybe not. Secondly, if you wanted to add super elevation data to those curve returns, you have to keep that in mind. Super elevations typically run along curves, so you want to keep that in mind in terms of super elevations. So curve returns typically are the radiuses of the curve, so you want to keep that in mind also. And then building an assembly with just a generic link. We're going to run through that just to represent our roadway. And then also adding baseline and regions to our corridor. So really we want to collectively put all the pieces together. So from this, which would be our T road intersection, to this, which would be our curve returns and alignments, and finally, our corridor, built from those simple things. So again, really putting all these things together in reference to an intersection. Okay, so I hear this whispering sound saying demonstration and samples, demonstration and samples, demonstration and samples. So what we want to really do is we want to give you a demonstration, right? Because I don't like to PowerPoint people to death, and I want to give you demonstrations and samples, okay? Okay, so really, you guys really want demonstrations and samples. So now moving on to the demonstration. So one of the first things that I typically walk through with individuals is the tools that are presented to you in Civil 3D even though they don't say these tools are there. So you have a stock set of sub-assemblies that we're going to take a look at in reference to Civil 3D. And then from that point, here's a typical section of a roadway that we would use for our assembly. And then from that point, I would build the left side or the right side of my typical section in reference to my assembly. So clearly you can see there's a primary roll left side, there's a primary roll right side, and then there's a typical section for the intersecting road. And as I move on, then I need to create a typical section for a half side of a road. So there's going to be a intersecting road half section from my left side assembly. And of course I need to build one for my right side also. So as I'm kind of moving through those, I'm going to create an assembly for my shoulder and curb return. And this is just, again, just a document in reference to how I would push a person to use the intersection wizard in terms of detail, describing step by step for the intersection wizard. And as you can see, and we're going to walk through this during a demonstration. So I'm just kind of showing you what I will be doing in reference to my intersection wizard, offsets, my alignments. And from that point, curve returns. And then from my intersection, curve return parameters, and so forth. Okay? So now that I'm back, so the first thing we want to consider is, in order to build a corridor, you need an alignment, you need a profile, and you need a subassembly. One of the things that's necessary in reference to building a corridor is you have to have a horizontal alignment. So clearly here I have a centerline alignment to my cul-de-sac. Okay? I have a centerline alignment. I've talked to the reference of where we get our subassemblies. If I select Control 3, then you can see all my subassemblies. And they even have subassemblies straight out of the box for intersections. So I'm going to build a typical section, but again, just wanted to make reference to what a corridor is. A corridor is a three-dimensional representation of that road that we're going to build as a model. So if I select Control 3, it brings up my tool palette for my subassemblies. So I'm just going to close that temporarily. In order to build a corridor, I made reference to you needing three items: a horizontal alignment, a profile, and then an assembly. I have three assemblies here. One that represents the full road with curb and gutter, one that represents the left side of the road with a lane transition, and one with the right side of the road with a lane transition. So the first thing that I want to do is, I notice I don't have finished grade profiles. I need those in reference to creating my curve returns. So as I move on here, I'm just going to pull this up just really quick for time purposes. I've already created finished grades for my existing alignment for my curve returns and my center line of my roll. So here's the length of my curve return. It goes from station 124 to 212. And all that is this alignment. So I'm just going to go ahead and blow this away. I don't need this. And then I'm going to select this and delete that. Okay. So we'll select that. And we'll hit erase. Okay. So on the screen, you can see, and we won't too much worry about that. We all know if we hold our cursor on there, it's going to give us some kind of violation that for our alignment. But I have three alignments. One is the center line, one is the edge of pavement north, and one is the edge of pavement south. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to create a corridor. So what are the three things we need to create a corridor? We need an alignment, we need a profile, and then we need an assembly. And I have those three things for time purposes. I've already created those. Here's my existing ground, which is the green line, and my profile for each alignment. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a corridor. So if I come up here and I select create a corridor, it's going to prompt me for information. So the first thing I need, I'm going to use Danielle Court Design. I'm going to use my finished grade profile. And then my assembly, I'm going to use main road. And then I'm really not going to target, because if you look at my sub-assemblies, I don't have any daylight. So I'm just going to run it. I'll select OK, and then I select OK. Then I select rebuild my corridor. And if you look on my screen here now, I'll just cut on this one layer. For C-roll core, I have created a corridor. So the problem with the corridor in this cul-de-sac is the lanes begin to transition after a certain point. So if I pick on my corridor, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to Object Viewer, and you can see clearly here that I've just created a corridor that runs along that alignment. For time purposes, I'm going to pick on my corridor, I'm going to right click, and I am going to select corridor properties. And I am going to go into parameters, which is really nice. So under my corridor, I'm going to stop that corridor at 124, and I could go to the endpoint also, 0.87. I'll select apply, select rebuild my corridor, and look, my corridor stops at that point. My other alignment begins at that same station, which is the reason why, because again, my lanes are starting to transition and widen, so I can't have the same thing for my main road. So under this corridor, I'm just going to right click on it, and if I go into corridor properties, under parameters, I want to add a baseline. So my main line, which runs along my center line alignment, I add a baseline. I'm going to select add a baseline. My baseline is going to be my edge of pavement north. Again, there's three things necessary to create a corridor. So a baseline, a profile, and an assembly. So here you can see it doesn't have a profile. If I pick on the profile, there's my profile, north edge of pavement. And then what I want to do is, from that point, I want to add a region. And then that region, I'm going to add an assembly. And that assembly is going to be my cul-de-sac north. I'm going to select OK. So what that does is that runs along the whole alignment. And I just select OK. Now notice what we get when we create that. We get a alignment that runs along the north edge of pavement and a lane with a curb and gutter that runs along that alignment. So if we look up here, here's that cul-de-sac north. I have a curb and gutter, and I have a lane transition to the center. And that's what it's showing me. But the whole idea behind that is I need that lane to transition to this alignment here. So that's where we come in, and if we pick on it, we right-click, and we select corridor properties. And then in my targets, for my edge of pavement, I'll select target. And then my target right here for my alignment, I want to target Danielle Court Design. And I'm just going to add it in, select OK, and then I'm going to select OK. Then when I select apply, rebuild my corridor, then I select OK. Now you can see that it targets that center line alignment. Okay, so one of the things you always want to keep in mind anytime you're working with a curve radius is the fact that you want to be able to, and let me make sure everybody's still good here. Okay, so we want to make sure along curve radiuses that we transition to specific regions. So within my corridor, if I pick on my corridor, up here at the top, I can say edit targets, add regions, edit frequency. So if I pick on edit frequency and I pick that region right there, it says every 25 feet. So we know along a radius, the curve makes reference to the chord not the radius. So I'm just gonna change that to 5 feet along my tangent and 5 feet along my curve, and I'll select OK. Now you see how that smooths out the transition around? So if we pick on that and right click and just go to Object Viewer, just going to select Southwest Isometric, you can see how I'm starting to build the components of my corridor. Okay? So all we need to do now is add our south edge of pavement alignment. So if I pick on my corridor, if I right click and I go into corridor properties, I can add another baseline. So I'm going to add a baseline. This baseline is going to be edge of pavement south. So select OK. I'm going to pick edge of pavement south for my profile. And then I need to add a region for it to run along my alignment. So this is the thing that a lot of users run into. They just say OK. When you select OK and run the corridor, nothing shows up. Because a corridor, an alignment has to have a region that it represents, that it runs along. So if I pick on that again, right click, go into corridor properties. I'm going to right click and select add a region. And that region is going to use a subassembly for that region called edge of pavement south. Select OK. And then I'm just going to go in here and change the frequency because I want to target the edge of pavement, Danielle Court design. We'll add that target in, and then for my frequency, I'm going to change that also. So I'm going to change that to 5, and I'm going to change that to 5. And I'll select OK. And I'll select Apply. I'll rebuild the corridor, and I'll select OK. And then if I pick on it again, right-click, and go into Object Viewer. One of the reasons I always use Object Viewer is because it doesn't change my user UCS icon. So there's my corridor. Pretty straightforward in reference to that cul-de-sac. And again, this one has like a bulb that has 2 different limbs for my alignment. I could have made one alignment all the way around, but typically when I'm doing drainage design, I always keep in mind where my inlet is. So I'll have my alignment at the end point or the center of that inlet. So just in case it moves, then I can just move my alignment with it opposed to have to guess stations in reference to my drainage. So there's a cul-de-sac. Pretty straightforward and simple. 3 things you need to do to build a corridor: a horizontal alignment, a profile, and an assembly. Okay. So just kind of quickly moving through those. So the next thing we want to talk about really quick is a intersection. And anytime you see a convert from VBA to .NET, you want to convert that to .NET. A lot of the technology is built on .NET for Civil 3D now and the other Autodesk applications. So something really quick, and hopefully I think what we'll do is we'll try to get this webcast extended out maybe 15 minutes so that way I can address questions and other things that we may have missed. So the first thing we want to take a look at is now we have an intersection, and I've already built a corridor in reference to the intersection. I've already built it. So if I go in and select my corridor and select Southwest Isometric, you can clearly see, and we won't worry about the waterfall, I'll talk to that, reference to that in a minute. You can clearly see I've left out the intersection. And the reason I've left out the intersection is because you have to deal with the intersection the same way you've dealt with the cul-de-sac, by adding alignments for your curve returns and using specific subassemblies to address that. So clearly here, one of the things that I typically would do is with this corridor, if I pick on that corridor and go into corridor properties, and I'm just showing you this manually because the intersection wizard does this automatically. Just want to show you how it actually functions, so you'll be able to go in and modify and edit if necessary, if things don't work out how you think they will in reference to your intersection wizard. So, pretty simple and straightforward. If I look in this drawing, I have profiles for my curb return north, my curb return south, my main road, and my crossing road. So all those are there. So I am looking at Kate Avenue, which is here. So with Kate Avenue, just to give you an idea of how I would address this, for Kate Avenue, I'm going to pick on my corridor, right click, and go on up corridor properties. And let me just double check here. Okay. So from Kate Avenue, it says edit corridor baseline. I want to add a baseline. So the baseline that I'm going to add is going to be my corridor southeast. So all I'm going to do is add my profile for my corridor southeast. And I need to add a region to it, right? So I'm going to add a region. And that region is going to be using my corridor region on the right. And I'll select OK. And let's see what we get. So I'll select apply. I rebuild my corridor. I'm going to move this over just a little bit. You can see here's my corridor. And then I'm going to select OK. So here's my corridor region. And all I want to show you is how this thing is being built. So I'm going to zoom in to this area here. And you can see that my corridor is being built. And the other thing is, I'm going to show this from Southwest Isometric. I'm going to look at this curb and gutter here. So I'm going to zoom in. And we'll come back to that curb and gutter. So here's my lane. So if I look at that and I say edit targets, it's going to bring from this point, I'm going to select edit targets. So my width alignment is going to be my Kate Street alignment. So I'm going to select Kate Street. I'm going to add that in, select OK, select OK. Okay, so clearly now you can see that my lane is trying to transition to Kate Street. So what I want to be able to do is I want to change the length of this region. So I'll right click, I'll go to corridor properties, and then in my region, which is here, I can see my region here, that's from 0 to 39. So typically what I would do is I just go ahead and pick on it, because I want my region to go straight to this intersection. So now it's from 0 to 19, and it just represents halfway because I can't target two alignments with one region. So I have to create two regions with two different, with the same alignment but with two different targets. So and I'm just going to change the frequency. So right now if I select apply, just to see how that works, I'm looking in this area here. I only made it half to go to my intersection. I select apply. I select rebuild my corridor. So what is the reason why I only wanted to go half? Because when you're doing cross slopes from your high point or your low point of your high point of your intersection, you want the cross slopes to drain across from the curb, right? So that would be the reason why you would create that. So and then I'm just going to change the region. Along my curve, I'm going to change that to 5, select OK, then select apply. And then you can see how that works. Okay? And then we'll pick, as we move on here. So that's creating an intersection in its simplest form. You create the intersection, and then you create the two corridors for your main road and your crossing road, and then you can create regions that represent the target to Kate Avenue and then the target to Sam Street. So if I jump to my other drawing, which I already have done, you can clearly see how that works. So if I pick on it and say edit region, So I'll go and say edit target. So you can clearly see how each one of these have been targeted to reference coming around the curve and then going straight to the alignment. So if I pick on this and select curved surfaces just to create a surface, I'm going to select OK. That's saying border only. We're going to select point to design. We'll select OK. We have a corridor. We're going to do shrink wrap to the outer extents. We're going to select OK, rebuild the corridor, and then I'm going to select OK again, and it just takes a second. Okay, so here's my surface. So here's my surface, and if I right click on that surface and go into edit surface style, one of the things that's critical is I need to see what's going on with my drainage. So I usually cut on my slope arrows to kind of show me what's going on in there. So I'll select OK, and as you can see, if you look at cross slopes, it's sloping away from the center line of the road and the intersection of my intersection back to my curve. Okay? So it takes a little getting used to, but it can be done. So that's the manual way of creating a intersection with my corridor. That's the manual way. So we looked at a cul-de-sac, we looked at an intersection, we also want to look at a roundabout. So one of the other things that we want to take a look at is in your tutorials, straight out of the box from Civil 3D, if I go into my intersection drawing, which I'm just going to create straight out of the box. You get this straight out of the box. So I have a horizontal alignment and I have a vertical alignment crossing. And at the beginning of this session, I talked about showing the intersection wizard. So right here up at the top, if I select create intersection, you also can create a roundabout and add approaches. I will show just a small piece of that, but let's do the intersection really quick here. So it's prompted me, in order to create the intersection wizard, you have to have two alignments crossing or touching each other. So if I just pick my intersection here, it's going to ask me to select my main road, and I'm going to pick my main road to be my road B. And then it says, once this comes up, it brings up my intersection wizard. We talked about the intersection wizard, right? And you can tell it a specific style. What's critical is, do you want these two roads crowned, or want a primary road going through that's maintained? So I'm just going to select all crowns maintained, and then I'm going to select next, and it shows me my road alignment. And if I wanted to, I could come in here and change that and move that down in reference to my road alignment from road A to road B. Okay? And then create offset and curve returns. What the intersection wizard does is it automatically creates your offset alignments for your curve returns. So if I picked on offset parameters, it's going to give me parameters in reference to what I want for my offsets for my primary road and my secondary road. And I'll come back. And then the same thing for curve returns. And then also the same thing for curve returns. And it's nice video graphics that show you where you are in your intersection wizard. Okay? And it shows me my curve fillets and what radiuses I want to use to represent my curve returns. And then also with my lane slopes and my curve returns, it shows me my curve return profiles. So one of the reasons I was showing you that earlier, so you now have the ability to come back in at some point and change what you want on your curve returns. Because we talked about having super elevations and things like that on our curve returns also, right? So, and then I'll go ahead and select next. And then remember, I haven't shown you in this drawing the secondary road, half section, full section. I haven't showed you any of those things, right? Because they're in this drawing automatically, okay? they will be in a drawing that you open up straight from Civil 3D automatically. So you want to keep those things in mind. And up at the top it says create corridor in an intersection area. So I want to go ahead, I can create a new one or I can add to an existing one, because you've seen on the previous one I had an existing corridor that I could have just did the intersection. So then I just select create intersection. Then it takes a couple seconds. And then from that point, it brings up my intersection. So just really something that quick. There's my intersection. Okay? If I pick on the intersection, just like I did for manually, the only difference now is it did it automatically. You see those blue lines that represent my actual intersection. And if I come in and select Southwest Isometric, you can see it's created my intersection. The beauty of working with Civil 3D is you can have all these rendered as you're creating this data. So long as you select the rendering material in the corridors, you can have it all rendered. Okay? So the other thing that I talked about doing was I talked about when I create a surface from any corridor, I like to show my slope arrows. So I'm just going to I'm going to show 2 and 10 contours here. As my overhang, I'm just going to have the top. I'm going to add it as a break line. My boundary, I'm going to right click. I'm going to do corridor extents. And I'm going to select OK. Then I'm going to rebuild the corridor. And there's my corridor surface. And one of the things I like to do is show my drainage arrows to see if what I've designed and built is actually working. So I'll select OK. Okay. So there's my corridor. Let's move that down a little bit. Okay. So there's my corridor. There's all my slope arrows. Everything's working the way it's supposed to. Okay. Even if we move that a little further. So just in case if nobody ever done a scale, let's go in here and create a quick custom scale in reference to our intersection of how we want to add this thing. So we're going to say if we go down 1 inch, goes 50 feet. How about that? And we'll say 1 inch equals 50 feet for our drawing units. Bang. And then there's my 1 inch equals 50 feet. I select OK. And I'll come back down here. I'll select 1 inch equals 50 feet. Just to create a quick scale. So something really quick and simple. So create a quick scale. So there's my intersection from the intersection wizard. If I pick on, we'll go right back up here. Just to make that a little bit smaller. So there's my intersection. So I'm going to scale back down. If I pick on my intersection symbol here, now you can see where I can edit specific intersection, lane slopes, curve returns, recreate the profile, corridor surface. I can go into specific parameters, my properties of my intersection. So you do have all that functionality from just picking on that intersection. Okay, so pretty straightforward. If I right click, go back into edit surface style, I can cut those slope arrows right back off. No big deal. Okay, so that's my intersection. So the next thing I want to take a look at really quick here. We'll just come here. So we'll take a look at this roundabout here. And roundabouts are no different from corridors, but I am going to show you as a special feature something you could use as a different tool in reference to roundabouts. So if I pick on, once this comes up, it'll take a second here. So if I pick on that and I'm going to send that to the back, you can see that I have a roundabout. Okay. So from my first drawing, just to show you kind of how I start out with this. All I do is start out with an image. And then from my alignments, oh, this will come up in a second. Then from my alignments, this is one of the reasons why going into alignments really is a critical thing. So free curve fillet, floating curve, and then a floating curve with a spiral. So here, one of the critical things is you can have two entities between 2 points or between 2 entities in a radius. And then you can do a best fit and a more floating curve through a center point at a specific direction. So from entity end to end, from entity through a point, and then from entity from a radius. And then I can say best fit. So really some really nice features, because you can't create an alignment from a circle. So you do want to keep that in mind. You cannot create an alignment from a circle. So even if I started out and created one from a specific center point, I could do that also. Okay, so just some things to keep in mind. So if I jump back to my roundabout 3, if I look in here, all I've done is I've created one alignment here. If I pick on that alignment and I right click and say edit alignment geometry, it brings up that toolbar, and I'll bring up my layout parameter, and then I'll pick on my alignment, which is here. And if you see this alignment, you see that it's not constrained. My parameters are true, and it has 3 pass-through points. So it's just a circle. And again, you cannot create a circle, an alignment from a circle. You have to do it through the layout parameters tool when creating an alignment. So the other thing you want to keep in mind, and I'm just going to close that up, is all I have is 4 approach alignments. And then from those 4 approach alignments, if I pick on my corridor, just to show you what that looks like, I'm going to cut on my corridor. Cut on my corridor. And we're going to open this one up also, just to kind of give you a view of that. And here's my 4th drawing. So I take users through those 4 stages, and we'll just open up this drawing here. And then one of the tools that I'll also show you. So right now on my 2nd screen over here, I have a plan, and then on my other screen, I just turned it to 3D in a Southwest isometric view. So it's just a custom view. But if I go in here under my corridor, layers, and I'm just going to scroll down, and I'm going to cut that corridor on so you guys can see how I've created this. And this just takes a second. So now if I pick on my corridor over here, you can see it's just the same as my intersection. So I'm going to come in, go into Object Viewer, and there's my corridor. So if I zoom in a little, I can show you piece by piece in reference to my corridor. And this will come up in a second. So clearly you can see around my alignment, there's lanes that's transitioning the same way I did with my intersection. Okay? So same exact thing. Just a matter of targeting your corridor. So I'm going to come out of this. So let's take a second here. And it's just regenning. It's just going to take a quick second here. And I'll close that out. Okay, so if I jump back, I told you one of the things I also wanted to be able to show you is, some of the new technology that you may not be aware of in reference to the Autodesk product. So here we have a product called, Autodesk has a product called Autodesk Vehicle Tracking. And what it allows you to do, which is really nice with Civil 3D, is it allows you to create roundabouts and cul-de-sacs also. Okay? So all I have is 2 alignments. The beauty of working with this, and this is one of the reasons why I didn't take a lot of time showing you the roundabouts, because if you use roundabouts, there's no reason why you shouldn't use Autodesk Vehicle Tracking. So I have a vehicle tracking ribbon up at the top, and right here I just want to create a new roundabout. And I'll pick on it, and then it's going to bring up specific information in reference to my drawing settings, and I'm just going to select OK. Then it's going to ask me, well, where's my junction at? So I'm going to create a junction using a existing ground, and the beauty of that, here's my junction. So the other one I created a junction by creating a center line circle alignment. Then it's asking me for my first approach. So watch what happens when I pick on my first one. It says this is going to be my first leg of my street. If I select OK, look what it creates for me automatically. There's my cul-de-sac right there. Okay? I'm going to select my second approach, which is here. It creates my second approach, and so forth. And then on my third approach, and then I'll hit enter. So there's my roundabout. The beauty of working with this roundabout here, if I pick on it, you can see it's based upon AASHTO standards for my roundabout. Okay? Based upon AASHTO standards. The beauty of working with it is I also can use this in Civil 3D, and everything dynamically updates. Okay? So far, being able to create a roundabout. So if I came in here and said, okay, I just want to edit this roundabout, if I pick on it, it's going to bring me to this point, and this is the critical point. I want to create alignments. I want to create a road subassembly. When I select apply, it runs through just a little rebuilding process. Just takes a second, and I close that right up. And if I pick on it and go into my object viewer, I'm going to go into Southwest Isometric. So we can get a better view. There's my corridor. There's my corridor. Okay? So remember the process in terms of what I did manually. The beauty of working with this Autodesk Vehicle Tracking is it will create this corridor automatically for you. And just as a quick, as a quick sample, I mean, I can go in and put in a specific vehicle to drive through. So we're just going to come down here just really quick. I'm going to use up every second that I have in reference to vehicles and intersections and corridors. So I'll pick that truck. And then the nice thing is it understands that this is a corridor in Civil 3D. So all I have to do now is give it a swap path and pick that point. Okay? So, and this is just an AutoCAD object. So watch what happens when I pick on that and erase it. Pretty straightforward, right? It's just an AutoCAD object. I'm just going to go ahead and select that truck again, just to show you again. No tricks up my sleeve. So something really simple. We'll do one more. Snaps automatically. We'll use that single truck. And all I have to do is draft it right around that cul-de-sac. Hit enter. And then the beauty of that is now it shows me my swap paths analysis through my intersection, my cul-de-sac, my roundabout, and then I can animate it just to kind of give you some visualization in reference to what I'm doing. So I'll go ahead in, and it shows me my truck, and then it'll show me my truck driving through that roundabout. So whether it's an intersection, whether it's a roundabout, whether it's a cul-de-sac, you can do all these things in Civil 3D. And now, not only you have the ability to use Autodesk vehicle tracking to show that also. Okay? So we can look at different angles of the truck if we wanted to. Going through that roundabout or that intersection. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Okay? So I'm going to close that out. I can create AVIs, I can select pictures, I can create viewpoints, but the critical piece is I have my corridor, I have my intersection, I have my roundabout, and I can just create a surface, something plain and simple, add the top, and then a boundary. Really don't know how, didn't create a lot from that, but that's the existing ground. It's going to look kind of scary, but I have a surface here that I can modify. So that existing ground, I would have created a finished gray one, but as you can see, it builds that surface. Okay, so now that we've gotten to this point, I think we can address some questions if you wanted to. Laura?
Hi, Ken. Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on the questions pane, and besides all the great, oh, okay, actually, we do have one question
Just
from,
one.
yeah, from Chrissy Dawson. Does the vehicle tracking animation include emergency vehicles such as fire trucks?
Yes. So you have over 4,000 that you can use in reference to AASHTO standards and specific states. And there's also ones that you can go in and add in for lengths. So for instance, one of the big things is this idea of doing a profile, you know, of that vehicle. And the same thing in reference to a emergency vehicle is going to have the same information in reference to that specific vehicle.
Okay, thank you, Ken. And we have another question is, could you show 3-point turns with the vehicle tracking?
3-point turns with vehicle tracking?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So with the vehicle tracking, so you can go in and pick what you want to lay out in terms of your turn radiuses, things like that, how close you want to get. So you can do as many as you want. Was that the question that was asked?
Let's see if there's any follow-up questions. Oh, he's saying such as backing up. So you.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, backing up. Oh, so sure. So one of the things you also so one of the things you also can do in reference to your Autodesk vehicle tracking. Right now, I have like clearly a parking lot area. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put this in here, and we'll use this truck. That'll be fine. So we'll select OK, and then we'll start it here. Let me zoom in a little bit. So what I can do is, when I typically want to get in to see if a truck will actually fit in there, I'll use this as an alignment for my turn point. So then I can pick points in reference to coming in, and then once this catches up, and then I can pick the alignment here for my turn point. And then if I come straight back here, and then I can pick this alignment to turn back into this dolly. And so then when I want to animate that, something real quick. It's going to show me my vehicle. And then you have specific backside and heights that you can use. So let's speed this up a little bit. So then you can see once the truck comes in, and I look at it from the back, backing up, or I can look at it from the side, then you have specific angles that you can look at in reference to the truck. So you can do all those things.
Okay, great. Hopefully that answers Sean's question. Okay, so we have a couple more questions regarding the recording of this webinar, and the answer is yes. This recording will be sent to you once we convert that file, and we'll be uploading that onto YouTube, and you will receive a YouTube link. And there's also some questions centered around is this vehicle tracking part of the standard Civil 3D package, or is it an add-on?
It's a separate add-on.
Yes, and there is promotions going on right now for new license of vehicle tracking in 2014. It is 15% off for Autodesk subscription customers who already hold a license of AutoCAD 2014 and Map 3D, AutoCAD Map 3D 2014 and Civil 3D 2014, as well as Infrastructure Design Suite 2014. So if you have any questions regarding this product, we encourage you to write down this number. That is actually the general applied software number, 800-899-2784. And we'll be able to help you relocate your account representative, and we'll be able to help you work that out. And okay, let's see around here. Okay, so Greg asked about where did PowerPoint slides come from, like a manual. So I think this PowerPoint.
Which ones?
I think the PowerPoint slides that you put on earlier, Ken.
The PowerPoint slides that I cut came from just from different sources, and also when I did a class at AU on intersections.
Okay, yeah, Greg clarified saying the ones at the beginning of the presentation. So I think you answered that question.
Well, okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and would you be, I'm not so sure on this, are we disseminating the PowerPoints as well?
Well, they can get in touch, and you know, we can, whatever they want.
Yep.
It's
okay.
open.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll work something out for that. We encourage you to check out other LiveLab learning classes because Ken is an experienced instructor that continuously teaches classes on LiveLab learning. So we recommend you constantly check on the website, and you will be able to see upcoming classes regarding Civil 3D and infrastructure engineering.
Yeah, and if there's specific things that you want to look at, whether it's transportation, grading, whatever the case may be in reference to site, commercial, residential, or transportation, we have classes for that and custom training also.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And if there's a specific webcast that you guys have a specific interest in, we can put one of those together also.
Okay. Yeah, we do have a couple more questions now. How do you handle superelevation in an intersection? I believe this is a very specific question.
Superelevations in an intersection, you'd have to go on that alignment. You would have to go on an independent alignment in the intersection.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see if this will come up in a second here. You would have to go on the specific alignment in the intersection, and from that alignment, so let me just cut this off as something really quick here. When you picked on your alignment, you would be able to go in and calculate and edit superelevations. So when that came up, clearly this is in the corridor. But here, if I went this corridor northwest, then I can calculate my superelevations just based upon that corridor northwest. So when I select calculate superelevation now, clearly within superelevations you need design speeds on your alignment. So it would be the same process. It's a matter of going in and editing that data. So you can do it that way also.
Okay, and he has a follow-up question asking, is there a maximum skew angle that the intersection wizard can handle?
There is not a maximum skew angle, but when you go to transition, you're gonna have to create alignment profiles, like at the edge of the pavement on that maximum transition angle. On the edge of pavement, you have to target and create a profile so your grades your cross slopes will work. It's a little bit more involved, but yes, it can be done.
Okay, great. Awesome. Okay, I don't think there's, okay, so E has a question about, is there a class for the 3D view? For the 3D view, I'm not sure.
For what 3D view?
For the buildings and trees. So
So those are just blocks. Those are just blocks and buildings. You can create those straight out of AutoCAD. But if that was something you requested, we could go through that during the course of the class also.
Okay. Great.
Yep. So for instance, just as an example, this building right here is just a building that's been extruded as a 3D solid. That's all it is. It's just a 3D solid. So you can create those anywhere in the drawing.
Yep, that answers his or her question. Okay, awesome. So I believe at this point we can finally wrap this webinar up, and thank you so much for joining us today, and for those who kept going with us even though we had some technical difficulties, and hopefully you got a lot of it. We want to reassure you the high quality of LiveLab Learning's instructors and classes. And we do apologize that your LiveLab learning experience today was impacted by the severe weather conditions in Georgia. And just so you know, you will be receiving a link when this presentation is posted. And we could definitely review any materials you missed, or simply if you want to go over it again. In today's webinar, Ken showed the great capabilities of Civil 3D, and more importantly, the all-new Autodesk vehicle tracking tool. So if you have any questions about this product, or if you're ready to go ahead and purchase one, call us at 800-899-2784. And we'll be able to get you settled with that. And thank you again for joining us and taking the time to view the presentation. Have a great rest of your day. Oh, okay. I see we might have one more question. But since yeah, we could probably since for past webinars, there's a question, is there a place to view the past webinars? So we will be including a link to our YouTube channel. If you want to go on to YouTube right now and search for LiveLab Learning, you might be able to find it there too, but we'll definitely include a YouTube link to our YouTube channel. And that's a great recommendation, actually. We'll put that link on our Facebook page as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and we wish you a great rest of your day. And just follow us closely on Facebook, and we'll be posting about our upcoming training opportunities. Thank you so much.